Hey, what's going on, guys? Asher and John here, and today we're going to be talking about everything that we know is coming to Season 15 of Destiny 2. But before we jump into this, I also want to keep up to date on all Destiny 2 news, information, links, tutorials, and more that you had subscribed to my channel. Otherwise, let's jump into it. So starting off, let's go ahead and talk about some PvE changes. In a couple TWABs ago, they mentioned that fusion rifles are getting a complete rework. Breach grenade launchers, that being the special ammo grenade launchers, are going to get some sort of PvP nerf. They also ended up mentioning that special ammo economy in general is getting a PvP nerf. Scout rifles, hand cannons, and machine guns are all getting a PvE buff. One of the biggest things that's going to happen is Anarchy is supposedly getting a huge nerf. I mean, I don't blame them. Anarchy is one of the best weapons in the entire game at the moment. And lastly, they also mentioned that exotic primaries are getting some sort of PvE buff so they can be more useful in-game content. Take that with a possibly coming in Season 15. They weren't really specific. They sort of mentioned maybe it can happen in Season 15, maybe it can't. But just be known that a PvE buff to exotic primaries is coming soon. Next up, we're going to talk about some Vanguard and Nightfall related stuff. So first up, with Vanguard reputation is going to get changed to be more like Crucible and Gambit rep. This means that Vanguard tokens are going to be deprecated at the end of Season 14. So if you have a bunch of Vanguard tokens, please remember to spend those before Season 15 starts. Otherwise, they will become unusable. Next up, with some Nightfall loot, they're going to be adding two weapons from Destiny 1, that be the Hothead rocket launcher and a Comedian shotgun. Also, with Nightfall loot, they're going to make it so two weapons have the potential to drop each week, instead of the usual one weapon featured each week. And lastly here, with Grandmaster Nightfalls, they're going to be making it so the catch-up mechanic, which allows you to choose any Nightfall, which usually appears at the last 3 weeks of a season, they're going to make it so that catch-up mechanic actually pops up on the first day that Grandmasters are available. This is mainly so you can end up gilding your Conqueror title faster. However, this is at the cost that when you complete a Nightfall, it gets removed from that catch-up node. Next up, in the PvE department, we got legendary stasis weapons coming. What this means is there's probably going to be a couple of stasis shields added to some of the enemies to mix up the Nightfalls, make them a little bit more complicated. Hopefully, at least at the moment, it is theorized that stasis weapons will work exactly the same as Solar Void and Arc weapons, and they'll only be in the energy and heavy slots. Moving on to the PvP section of things, starting off, we have a fix to 3-peaking in Trials and the competitive playlist. If you don't know what 3-peaking is, that's basically taking out a sword with no ammo, and as you know, when you pull out a sword, it puts you in third person. And basically, people, what they do in Trials or competitive is they abuse that third person view to look around the corners, to either potentially wait out an enemy or see them coming. Next up, in the PvP department, it seems like Trials of Osiris is getting a rewards rework. We have absolutely no details on this, but we should presumably hear exact details in one of the This Week at Bungie's before August 24th. Next up, Crucible and Gambit rep is getting sort of unified, so it should be potentially easier to level up your Crucible, Gambit, and Vanguard without really focusing on it. Lastly here, in the PvP department, we have a potential rework of Iron Banner coming. Currently, at the moment, we know that's definitely not going to happen at the beginning of Season 15. However, there is a possibility that Season 15 is going to be roughly 6 months long, so we could potentially see it halfway through the season. That pretty much wraps it up for the PvP changes. Let's go and talk about just some general changes that are going to be coming in Season 15, because they are pretty big. First off, starting with the biggest one, is definitely going to be full crossplay. I go into very intricate detail in a This Week at Bungie video that I did last week, which will be linked in the description down below. Basically, all I know is that every platform is going to be able to play together. Yes, console players are going to be able to play with PC players. Eventually, during mid-season 15, the PC text chat feature is going to be coming to console, which I hope that means it ends up working more often than not on PC. If you're concerned about matchmaking, PvE will just be all the platforms grouped in together. Doesn't matter if you're PC, Stadia, Xbox, PS4, etc. You're all going to be playing in the same matchmaking pool, which should hopefully boost some older things like Nightmare Hunts and Empire Hunts in terms of matchmaking. However, for PvP, PC players are only going to play against PC players. Also, if you're a PC player and you end up playing PvP with a console player, then your team is going to be thrown into the PC player pool. Otherwise, all consoles and Stadia are only going to play with all consoles and Stadia. Like I said, if you want details on how that's all going to go down, I go into more detail in the This Week at Bungie video that I did last week, which will be linked in the description down below. Next up in general changes, we got a huge transmog nerf. One of the big problems with transmog is that the Simp Strand currency that you get from just killing enemies is actually time gated, and so because of that, it takes a very long time, if you notice, to get your transmog bounties. Anyways, I have some good news. Starting next season, they're going to be removing the Simp Strand currency, and now in order to get the transmog bounties, which you complete to get the transmog tokens, it's only going to cost you 10,000 Glimmer to pick a bounty up. When that does happen, I still recommend only touching the raid and dungeons bounties. They seem to go by the fastest. Lastly here, in big general changes that is possibly coming, we haven't had word on this in a while, but supposedly huge light subclass buffs are coming in Season 15, which should hopefully bring up some of the more underused subclasses like Stormcaller Warlocks or Arcstrider Hunters. You know, pretty mediocre and bad subclass trees. With that being said, that pretty much confirms everything we know so far for Season 15. Since we have 3 more This Week at Bungie's this season still before the reveal of Witch Queen and Season 15, we should get confirmed or even revealed a bunch of really good details, like for example the Trials rework. So make sure you subscribe so that way you can see my This Week at Bungie videos where I go over the details as soon as they come out. And if you found this helpful, go ahead and give a like. And this was Ace Trainer John, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.